Hi everyone, I'm Maliha. Last year, I completed my master's in computer science from the University of Alberta for free. And just like any other international student, I too had to sit for the academic IELTS exam for higher studies abroad. And I got a band score of 8.5 after studying for only 2 weeks. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you some tips and tricks you can use to ace your next IELTS exam. Let's first quickly take a look at how the IELTS exam is actually formatted. The IELTS exam is set to test 4 of your skills in English. The first one is listening, which takes place for 30 minutes, and you have 4 sections with 40 questions that you have to solve. The second one is reading, which takes place for 60 minutes, and it has 3 sections with 40 questions. The third one is writing, which takes place for 60 minutes, and it has a total of 2 sections with 2 questions. Finally, we get down to speaking. It takes place for 11 to 14 minutes, and it has a total of 3 sections. Now that that's covered, let's talk about how to prepare yourself for each of these skills. For listening, if you are giving a paper-based exam, you will be given both a question paper and an answer paper. When listening to the recording, you will write your answers in the question paper, and at the end of the exam, you will get 10 extra minutes to transfer all your answers from the question paper to the answer script. Before the recording for each section is played, I would highly recommend that you skim through as many questions in the section as you can. This will give you a good idea on what type of answers to look for when you are listening to the recording itself. At the end of each listening section, you will be given some time to review the answers you've written so far. I would highly recommend you to not do that. Instead, utilize the time to go through the questions of the next section so that once again, you have an idea of what type of answers to look for when listening to the recording. There's also a multiple choice section in the listening portion where the answers can be quite long for each of the choices. When you are going through each of those answers, I would highly recommend that you actually mark down each of the keywords so that when you listen to the recording, you can look at the keyword and immediately remember what the answer was about. Another trick that a lot of the listening exams follow is the speaker during that recording will talk about each of the options in the multiple choice question, and they will change their opinion on some of these answers as the recording goes by. Make sure to cross them out whenever they say that that's the wrong answer. Finally, if you hear a word and you are not sure about the spelling itself, just write a rough estimate of that spelling in your question paper, and towards the end of the exam, when you have that extra time, try to go back to that answer and figure out the right spelling for it. Now we move on to the next section, which is reading. For reading, one of the crucial skills to build is time management, because you will be given 3 long passages that you need to read in order to answer 40 questions in 3 of the sections. So instead of reading the entire paragraph first before answering the questions, I would highly recommend that you go through the questions first and then go back to the passage to get the answer. So go through the first question, try to find the answer for that in the passage, go to the next question, try to find the answer, so on and so forth. Because the truth of the matter is, reading the entire passage is unnecessary, and also it is very time consuming. And another thing to point out is that even if you read the entire passage, by the time you reach to the questions, I'm pretty sure most of you will already have forgotten what you had just read. So might as well go through the questions first and get to the answers. During the reading exam, if there is a question that you are struggling with, do not spend too much time on that. Just move on to the next question immediately, and at the end of the exam, if you have time left in your hand, come back to the question and try to solve that. Another tricky thing to keep in mind during the reading exam itself are the instructions. Sometimes they will ask you to answer something in right or wrong. Sometimes they will tell you to answer it in true or false. Make sure you actually read the instructions before answering those questions. Lastly, keep in mind that if you are giving a paper-based exam, for reading, you will get a question paper and an answer script. But unlike listening, you will not be given an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answer from your question paper to your answer paper. So I would highly recommend that after you finish answering each section, just transfer all the answers for that section into the answer paper before moving on to the next section, because otherwise you might end up with an answer script with no answers, and we do not want that to happen. Lastly, during your reading section, if you encounter any unfamiliar words, do not fret. Try to get an understanding of that sentence through its neighboring words or even the neighboring sentences. More often than not, the understanding of the passage will not depend on that uncommon word. Now we move on to writing. For writing, you are given 2 tasks to complete. In the first one, you will be given either a diagram, a map, a table, a bar chart, or a graph to describe. Whereas in the second section, you have to write an essay where you express your opinion on a given topic. For the first section, when it comes to writing a report on the given diagram or map or table, I would highly recommend that you pinpoint the trends and the patterns first, and then write the report based on those trends and patterns that you have identified. Also make sure to group similar data together in each paragraph. For example, if you get a bar chart that is talking about the GDP of different countries, try to talk about the countries with the highest GDP in one paragraph and the countries with the lowest GDP in another paragraph. Also, try to mention numerical values that will support your ideas in the paragraph. Lastly, another hot tip here is to use linking words when trying to summarize different types of diagrams. So these can be something along the lines of however, moreover, although, in spite of. These are always words that an IELTS exam will often appreciate when they're going through your writing. As for the second section, when it comes to writing an essay, make sure that your ideas are flowing in a logical sequence. And one way you can do that is by writing about each idea in a separate paragraph. So take some time trying to figure out what ideas you want to talk about and in which sequence you want to talk about them before even starting to write the essay. Elaborating your ideas in an essay with examples is always appreciated. And make sure you remember to put a conclusion when you are ending your essay. You can also showcase your writing skills in English by writing more complex sentences, by using more conjunctions, by using passive voice, and also by using different types of tense like future, past, or present. However, keep in mind that your sentence still needs to be grammatically accurate with the right spelling. Make sure you avoid repeating words. You can try to use a synonym or even try to paraphrase that sentence in a way that avoids repetition of words. Lastly, you can also try to showcase your range of vocabulary by using 1 or 2 uncommon words, but make sure that it has the right spelling and it has been correctly used in the sentence. Last but not the least, we come to speaking. For speaking itself, I would highly encourage you to be as chatty, as friendly as you can be. Obviously, this takes some practice, so I would highly recommend that you actually practice talking about 1 or 2 common IELTS topics in front of the mirror to help you during your exam. Do not answer any questions that the examiner asks in 1 or 2 words. Instead, trying to elaborate on that answer, try to give examples, try to have a more descriptive answer when you were talking to the examiner. This will show how comfortable you are when it comes to speaking in English and how fluently you can talk about any topic. I would also recommend not to speak too fast because A, you might run out of topic to talk about, and B, your examiner might find it hard to follow your conversation. Try to be as grammatically accurate and fluent as you can, and if you can find a friend who's also giving an IELTS exam, make sure to practice speaking with them to be as comfortable as possible when it comes to talking to the examiner. Lastly, one thing to remember is that an IELTS examiner might often interject or interrupt you when you are talking or giving your speech. And this is very common, so do not get scared or anything. That is very common for an examiner to do because they want to make sure that the exam actually ends at the right time. Lastly, and I cannot stress this enough, practice, practice, practice. Honestly, during those 2 weeks, all I did was practice as many IELTS exam questions as I could. IELTS exam is very specific and it follows a lot of tricks and a lot of patterns that you can catch if you keep practicing different exam questions. While practicing, I would highly recommend that you actually time yourself. So give yourself only 60 minutes to complete reading, only 40 minutes to complete listening, and only 60 minutes to complete writing. And another point to note here is that a lot of us oftentimes tend to put a lot of focus on the listening and the reading skill and not as much on the writing portion because it can be tedious. But I would highly recommend that you actually practice writing as well, at least 2 to 3 times, because writing an essay does not come that naturally to us because we're not writing essays every day of the week, right? So as long as you practice, that logical flow of writing will come to you. And also describing a diagram or graph is a very specific task. So if you have some sort of practice, it gets a lot easier to write them down in just 60 minutes. Another thing I would highly recommend is when you are giving these practice exams, do review the solutions that you had written and try to learn from your mistakes so you can avoid doing them during your actual exam. And before I end the video, I want to give a few advice to people who want to improve their English in general. The best way to learn any language is by making it a natural part of your life. One way you can do that is just watching a movie in English or reading a book in English and trying to understand what they're talking about. And of course, try speaking in English with your friends. And that's the end of the video. I hope you found these tips and tricks useful and good luck on your IELTS exam. Of course, it can be daunting, but I wish you all the best. If you found this video helpful in any way, please like, share, and comment. Also subscribe to my channel if you want me to make more videos on IELTS exam, doing higher studies abroad, or even career in tech. Do let me know in the comments down below. I love reading them. And thank you so much for your time. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!